the finale. Can't lie to you, I was at the back where I usually film. Bro, I was curing cancer there. I was cooking. I was really chefing, like chefing, you know? And what ends up happening is that the mic, uh, 30% of the way through the video, apparently disconnected. I only realized this after when I was reviewing footage after I'd watched the whole thing. So this is usually the time when I post. Don't want to let you guys down, so we're doing it this way instead, you know? Man makes a plan. So we're gonna start, or rather we're gonna finish, eh? There's chapter 7 and 8. In chapter 7, we talk about the National Development Plan versus the likelihood that the PUI problem is perpetuated, which is when we talk about the PUI problem, we're talking about the poverty, unemployment, and inequality problem that exists in South Africa. And so the NDP is the ANC's solution to the poverty that plagues the people as it stands at the moment. The issue with this, the pushback, not against the existence of it, but against the contents of it, is they do not specifically lay out how they're going to achieve anything that they laid down. And it's very airy fairy. It's fugazi, it's up in the air. You know, it's not really concrete in that there is no real, here is the step by step by which we are going to achieve this goal, that goal, that goal. Do you understand? And so that's ultimately the difficulty of the way that the NDP is structured as it is. So in top 7 we touched on that, and Professor Blanche fears that the way that it is set up, it seems to be more so than an actual solution. It seems to be a scapegoat for the government in power right now, for them to say, we have attempted to do this, or we are attempting currently. Don't worry, stay calm, don't panic, no need for riots. We've made a plan, and on the morning of January 1st, 2030, our lives will have changed overnight, you know, somehow, magically. Do you understand? Is what it seems to be like. And I want to touch on the ending part of this, which is, let nobody rock the boat and let everyone await for the 1st of January 2030, when our social problems will vanish with the morning sun. Important stumbling blocks en route to the solution of the POI problem are the Americanization of the South African economy, the power and property that were allocated to the local and foreign company sectors by the elite compromise in 1993-94, and how is the ANC government going to remove these obstacles? What is the NDP planning to do about the excessive power concentrated in the hands of corporate conglomerates? Is it going to de-Americanize the South African economy? Is it going to de-globalize the South African firms that were given the privilege of shifting their listings to London and New York? And these companies are specifically the companies that were responsible for the exploitation of the unfree black labor, etc., which were allowed to be beyond the grip of the law, essentially, by moving their companies offshore. Is it going to de-Africanize the bureaucracy in an attempt to restore some of its erstwhile effectiveness and efficiency? Meaning, at the time of the compromise, as we've discussed before in parts 2 and 3, that highest echelon of the black elite that had already existed became on paper the previously disadvantaged and the beneficiaries of the BE and the beneficiaries of AA, in terms of the way that it's played out as well. I mean, we can't only say we can't only say at the time it seemed that they may have. No, it's been 30 years after that, and we can clearly see that the rich are still getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And more specifically, in the past 30, what has happened is the formation of this black elite, and the perpetuation of what we already saw to be a trend in South African systems historically has been a blurred line between the politics and the economy, in which there seems to be a constant corruption and there seems to be a constant lining of the own pockets of whoever. Um, because briefly, if we were to give for the people who weren't here before and the people who are going to be seeing this for the first time, after I post it officially on my channel. In chapter one, we talk about in 1990. Now, this is going to be a very brief synopsis, and I'm going to skim over a lot of detail, but this is the gist of it. In chapter one, we learn about why 1986 was the real turning point in South Africa's transformation, because 1986, a lot happened politically within South Africa, including a national state of emergency, etc. And it is also during this time that Chernobyl happens, Cold War happens, it comes to an end, resulting in Russia being defeated, United States are victorious, and that puts capitalism in a certain position, that puts the American ego in a certain position, that puts everything in a certain place to where it truly becomes very, very difficult to sum it in any other way than the Americans used their power that they earned at that point to sort of leverage and to strong arm South Africa into becoming a neo-globalist capitalist society as well, versus the socialist approach that the ANC was taking before this time. To go further above and beyond that, we would have to go into the emerging American-led neoliberal global empire in the 1980s. So basically, in that we talk about the Americas briefly and where their system came from, what it had become, the ups and downs that they've gone through, and why they're in trillions of dollars of debt, simply due to the fact that they created and brainwashed their own people into becoming such a consumer society, and they spreaded this. And this is that Westernism that we talk about when we talk about Western culture and Western this and that. This is the origin of it was economic, which is we need to Westernize these people. We need to give them this consumer's culture so that we can sell out things to them, because they became an overproducing culture in the times of your Henry Ford, etc., where hey, we have all this stuff that we're making now, and there's so many jobs and people are employed. Life is good, right? But now there's no one to buy the stuff because our people want to hold on to their wealth so that they can break into the elite class. We need to get them to let go of these ideas and latch onto the ideas of consumerism so that we have people to sell to. Works out great at first, because they do get the people to sell to, but then they run into the wall again of now everyone seems to be, now this market seems to be saturated. Where to now? And they go to Western Europe and so on and so forth, right? Eventually things happened. They end up using the people from those countries because the labor over there is cheaper, but this over time turns into them stopping producing, them getting their things from foreign imports, and that turns into a whole thing where factories are shutting down because their things are not being bought in, right? And so the industrialization within is absolutely confaculated. And due to this, this is what lands them in the trouble, right? Because as a nation, they are now importing 1010, and then they're paying out a lot in order to get these resources in, and their people are culturally consumers, not producers, right? And so that's basically that. We go into chapter three, we talk about the four political economic systems that were in place in South Africa. So at first it was the VOC, and this is before 1994. So it's the VOC, it's the British, it's the MEC, which is the mining energy complex, and they were basically in such a dominant role at that time that they may as well have been the politicians. And then after that, you have the MEC and the NP, which is that apartheid era, basically. And so this goes from the Dutch India Company lining up their pockets, the VOC, to the British lining up their pockets in the expense of the South Africans and the cheap African black labor and the bottom 25 million. By like mainly it's them that have been suffering all throughout. And so it's Dutch India Company lining up their pockets. It's the British lining up their pockets. After that, it's the the white companies that were here now. When I say white companies, because they're British owned companies. When I talk about the MEC, we talk about the Mineral Energy Complex, we're talking about your Oppenheimers, etc. And so this is them, right? Who were lining up their pockets at that time. And then after that is the MP and the Afrikaner. Oh, it's the Afrikaner MP and the Mineral Energy Complex, who are now, because the MP was voted in as the party, came to us as a surprise to the British, and they end up pushing obviously a pro-African or a pro-Afrikaans agenda, and yeah, that ends up being what it was. So from this, you can kind of understand that there's always been a sort of cahoots between the political and economic sector, in which someone's pockets are being lined up at the expense of the majority. Bottom line, there was always an element of corruption, an element of exploitation that has existed all throughout. The only difference is that there was a shift from the people exploiting were those companies, those foreign companies, were those elites that own the companies, those British, and then it became the Afrikaner. The only thing that changed from 1994 onward is the creation of a black elite. Now that is what we call the elite compromise that was taken by the ANC, because between the times of 1990 and 1996, there was an M. Night Shyamalan twist, a shift of the greatest proportion, from being a socialist party to being that's talking about redistribution, we're going to give out the land, this, that, and the third, to being a neo-globalist, a neoliberalist globalist party that is all about capitalism. What happened? And then after that, there is the creation of the black elite again, that top percent getting enriched, and with that top percent getting enriched, there is a decrease in the incomes of the rest of society underneath that black elite that was created. And so ultimately all that has happened within the history of South Africa is there was a shift from we or of the Dutch are enriching themselves through unfree black labor. From there, it became the British are enriching themselves, and then it became now the companies have moved here and they're here and they're enriching themselves. Now it's the Afrikaner and these companies are enriching their own people. Then it became, instead of there being a complete redistribution and the majority that has been historically exploited in the creation of these resources, rather than that happening, there was a creation of a black elite, and those became the beneficiaries of BEE, the beneficiaries of affirmative action, beneficiaries of all these things across the board. And then we go from that, which is the four political economic systems. Chapter 4, we talk about the transformation of a system orchestrated by the Mineral Energy Complex. So we talk about just the effects that the MEC, your Oppenheimers, we talk about those meetings between himself, Nelson Mandela. We talk about them reaching out to, who was it? Them reaching out to this British lady. I'm forgetting her name now. Her name, you'd know her name, bro, if I said it. But them reaching out and her coming, having sit downs with the NP, there being disagreements. The guy she disagreed with conveniently has a stroke, and she comes back, talks with FW de Klerk, and then they end up agreeing that okay, there does have to be the sit down, and this is all in the midst of, again, Chernobyl just happened. Russia's not in a good spot economically. People are pulling away funds from the NP. So from all sides, there was pressure to have sit downs and to actually sit down and make sure that they sort out whatever needed to be sorted out at that time. And so their role in it was in creating the terms of the compromise, meaning we're going to have the privilege of enlisting our companies in places where they're going to be out of the reach of the law. And on top of that, we're going to, instead of taking our money, because if you noticed, nothing happened to the money that was there at the top. That top 10% in terms of generally has by and part largely stayed the same, and has passed power and money around between themselves in terms of the top 10% of South Africans now. Majority white, um, yeah, has like those people who benefit from the mineral energy complex have been there, and their money is untouched in all of this. And then there is the black elite that was created. And when they came from being the top 10% here and their income raised all the way up, these guys' income didn't go down. The rest of the income went down for everyone else. So notice that these people got to essentially move out, wash their hands of whatever crimes they had, and say, hey, on paper, we have created this black economic empowerment. We've done this affirmative action. What do you want from us? Do you get what I'm trying to say? And then they got to absolve themselves of that. And then further beyond that, it's affirmative action, the rapid Africanization of bureaucracy, which was a mistake in terms of it became a system where even people who were not qualified to be in those positions were put in those positions, especially at certain levels of government. And we talk about the tenderpreneurship today, stuff like that, in which people are undeservedly lining up their pockets as their predecessors did, rather than addressing the true issues and the people who are ultimately suffering all throughout this. Is that bottom 50 or so percent of South Africans, that bottom 25 million, 95% of which are Africans, 5% of which are colored. Those are the people who've truly been perpetually suffering all throughout time, all throughout this brief history, all throughout this 400-ish year period. And they are the people who are becoming even poorer now and are being held at bay with the promises of a national development plan, etc. But we're going to get into that now. And then, yeah, we basically get into the PUI problem, poverty, unemployment, inequality problem, which is what I was basically getting into now, which is there's that subsect of people. And again, I'm skimming over a lot, and I know you probably think, yo, bro, you said so much. Trust me, there's a lot more, chief, and there's a lot more detail within. But it's understanding that the PUI problem is something that has gotten worse since the changing of power, the changing of hands of the governments, and not necessarily because the ANC is such a terrible government, but also because they've been weakened by certain things where they had to have certain taxes as a part of the GDP, as a part of the agreement, right? In the formation of this black elite. So people got to wash their hands. They had to accept the American capitalism, certain tax structures had to remain in place all throughout, regardless of what they decide to do, which made it nearly impossible for them to make any real change. On top of it making it impossible for them to change, it with the introduction of the American neoliberalism and globalism, it introduced South Africa, a developing country, to the ruthless global market. Absolutely tore them apart. Absolutely tore us apart. It's tearing us apart today. um, and in that, especially, is the perpetuation that historically we've understood, or is understood to be an issue in these Western countries, that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And so there's an introduction of that element to it as well, on top of everything else there. So yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie, bro. After I finished reading this book, Chief, I finished reading it yesterday. I couldn't film yesterday. I couldn't make this video yesterday because I was really in a place where I was just lost in terms of, okay, now how is what I'm doing? Because I started a company, Sage Consulting, and the main aim, the goal, the dream is to grow small businesses across South Africa, eventually invest in them, own equity in them, and push that vehicle as far as high as we can and break out into Africa, essentially. And this is something that I hope to achieve over my entire lifetime, right? It's something that I hope to do. But anyway, in having this dream, after reading all this and understanding how deep seated the issues are, it made me rethink what I was doing. But I'll talk about that a bit more later. It's the fairy tale optimism of the NDP plan, which is ultimately, um, yeah, Mr. DeBlanche noticed that it was very airy fairy and not very targeted, which is a big issue. And then lastly, what went wrong in the shifting, and I think that's the chapter that really it hit a different kind of place for me, where he's talking about it hit a different kind of place because he speaks of how difficult and dire the situation truly is. When talking about the NDP plans, obviously that this is some kind of smokescreen, in which they're trying to just get the people to, or prevent, push back as far as they can, the people getting to a place where they just say, eat the rich. We're just going to murder these people, right? By saying, yo, the sun will rise 2030, everything will be fine. Don't worry about it right now. Don't worry about what's going on. Don't worry about who's me, my Bentley. Don't worry about my Bentley, bro. Chill. And in that last chapter, it's about the issues and what went wrong. And the part that hit a nerve is in the going wrong, there's also a part that we need to understand, which is the iron was hot, so to speak, in 94 and around that time. When is the iron ever going to be hot again? And when it is hot, is it not going to be at a point where society is straight up melting down at that point? Do you get what I'm trying to say? And so I suppose that became, or that is the difficulty at this stage of the game. So after reading this, understanding all this, again, there's a lot more depth than that it is in the scope of all these videos that I've made thus far. And I've probably made an hour's worth, maybe more, of videos covering this book. It is still beyond the scope of these videos to cover in depth everything that was said there, because there's just too much to say. But something very, very important that happened for me is that it made me think. Going back to what I was saying earlier, it made me think about what I'm doing in terms of saying we are going to grow small businesses across South Africa in hopes to impact the quality of life of the people that are already touched by these businesses. And it put a chink in that armor in terms of the way that it's sort of manifesting itself now, to where I'm just working with people that, how can I say, they're already entrepreneurs, they're this, they're that. And it made me sort of think, am I not now just helping people who are in the middle class go into the upper middle class? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, how am I really impacting the lives of the people that are really, really affected, like deep down and realistically, by these problems the most? The people that are mostly affected by the PUI problem, which is that bottom 25 million. And it made me question, what really is the effect that I'm going to have if I really, really do this, if I really make this. I'm not saying that I can, but it's a very, very huge, big dream. And if I do dedicate my life to it and I make it happen, what impact is that really going to have, became the question. And for me, at first, the answer to this wasn't very obvious until literally today, as I was making the first video. I talked about, I had made a statement, which is, I'm the next Nelson Mandela, but politics is not going to solve our problems. Economics are. And I was questioning whether that statement was even true anymore. What does it all even mean? Like, that's where I was at. I was like, do I go into politics? What am I doing? Is what I'm doing even going to be effective? Am I going to have the impact that I think I'm going to have? And literally right there and then, I had the realization as I was talking about where America is at, because we are an American-led society. We are an American-led in an American-led capitalist system, in which right now Donald Trump is the president. And the reason why for capitalists all around, etc., he is the no-brainer decision, to be quite frank and honest, and why it was a landslide victory is because of his laws regarding taxes and tariffs of importation. Now, the reason why this is important is because if we go back and address what the American system was at that time and what it caused and why they're in so much debt, right? Is because they created a consumer society and they stopped the industrialization. So they stopped creating, they stopped producing, and they were consuming the whole time. And that ended up having whole factory cities, I believe Chicago was, being shut down, etc. And what was it, Detroit, Chicago, something like that. So the production was, it ended up being shut down due to their mass importation of external goods. Uh, sorry, due to their mass importation of external goods, and so as such, when Donald Trump says he wants to do these things, it's very encouraged by business owners due to what it means, not just for them, but what it means in terms of for the American society. And now going back to my thing, going back to the consultation to the business and wanting to grow small businesses, it makes sense to say economically the solution to the poorest subsect of South Africa may well be, in terms of what we can do, it may well be growing these businesses because they're already in these places. And it's not necessarily just directly we're going to grow only schools, we're going to grow digital schools, we're going to grow, it's not necessarily just that, but it's also when we grow these, it will enable us to impact the lives of the people that are that are surrounding these businesses, or where these businesses are a part of the community. We can grow them, and that will increase the quality of life of the community, and not necessarily as directly as you may think. Because I thought to myself, again, are we just going to do schools? Are we going to do selfish? And then it's how do we get people to involve themselves in those things and to change the entire mind of society? And that's when I began to think, yo, maybe politics is the solution. And then I thought to myself, no, because in Donald, for example, wanting to do what he's doing, the idea is if we stop that, it will encourage production. And so if we encourage and stimulate the growth of small businesses within these communities, we will essentially begin to create opportunities, not only for employment, but also for good business practices to be in these places and for them to be profitable. And when these companies are profitable, they, yes, will begin to employ people, but they will also begin to have better produce. They will have the resources to buy from your natural your organic farm lady stand. They're going to be able to buy her cabbages and to buy so and so's potatoes and to buy this and to buy that at certain price points that they wouldn't be able to otherwise, just due to the efficiency of the company, the way it's set up, etc. And so, yo, honestly, as I was making that video, there was a rejuvenization and a revitalization of my dream and my purpose, because not that I had slowed down in pursuing it, but I'd slowed down because not begun to lost. I'd begun to lost. You see, now my English is running out. Yeah, sepere slungu. But faith, you know, you trying. Not that I'd begun to lose faith in my dream, my purpose, my vision, but reading this made me think and try to understand fully how exactly me doing what I want to do is going to get done what needs to be done in this country. And the the way of thinking that I started to have as I was talking about it, I slept on it yesterday, no solution, nothing. There was a hopeless feeling, and like I was literally sitting on a cliff yesterday, just thinking about life. Like, wow, what am I doing? How is that gonna help anything, man? And it wasn't a good place to be in. But at the end of the day, I'm very glad I had this conversation with you guys, in which I was able to understand that it's not always necessarily about the direct impact. Sometimes it will be a Chisanyama that is going to get the benefits of this. Um, it will be a barbershop. It will be whatever the case is. And although it's not directly impacting people's lives, just because you can get a fresh cut at a certain price point and your time is going to be used efficiently, etc., doesn't necessarily mean that your quality of life is going to be better, but you do get a bit more time back. It does increase the efficiency of that shop, so it is going to be able to hire other people. And you getting your time back and not having to be stuck at these places gets you out of the matrix in a way, and out of perpetually sitting waiting for this next thing to happen. And hopefully, with us stimulating the economies in these small places, there's going to be a little bit more comfort and a little bit less in survival mode, because you can't think when you're in survival mode. You can't live when you're in survival mode. If you can't think past the next meal and where that's going to come from, then it becomes very difficult to plan long term and to make things like that happen. And so if we can create these spaces where that is no longer an issue for the poorest 25 million South Africans, then I believe we can get to at least a better place. And like I said, this may not happen in my lifetime, but I'm willing to dedicate my life force to it. I'm willing to live and die for it, and hopefully plant the seeds or the foundation of something that is going to become solving that poverty, unemployment, inequality problem through doing this. And so, yeah, revitalization from my part. It has been a decent series. This has been the finale. And yeah, thank you guys for going on this journey with me. It has been very interesting. There have been some ups and downs and some thinking. You can see even within the videos, there are certain emotional highs and lows, because I'm learning this as you're learning it, right? So I'm unwrapping it as you're unwrapping it. And there were really dire points, like I said yesterday, where I couldn't film this video because I was just in a spot where, like, what's it for? I was like, why am I doing this? And then today I was able to actually connect the dots and make it make sense for myself. And hopefully, if I can achieve anything, it is that moment for you where you think to yourself, why? You understand? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your like, and thank you for your comment. I appreciate it. Hopefully, if I can achieve anything on this channel and in making that series of videos and future series and videos, it is just to begin to think. That's all. To begin to question, to begin to ponder internally, and in so doing, I believe that we move closer, because like I said yesterday, I didn't know why I was still doing it. And then when I understood, I've come back with an even greater conviction, because I now have context to what I'm doing. And I'm not just doing it for the sake of doing. I'm doing it, I understand the history, I understand the implications, I understand all the workings around it. And because that is so, I can not only do it, but I can do it knowing that there is a purpose and there is something greater that is being built. And with that being said, we have come to the end of the live stream. We have come to the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. This video will be up on my channel immediately. And if you do want to do a brother a favor in his cause, please do hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much. I've been Sage, signing out.